Chapter 3. Why do we need a parliament? We in India pride ourselves on being a democracy. Here we will try and understand the relation between the ideas of participation in decision making and the need for all democratic governments to have the consent of their citizens. It is these elements that together make us a democracy, and this is best expressed in the institution of the Parliament. In this chapter, we will try to see how the Parliament enables citizens of India to participate in decision making and control the government, thus making it the most important symbol of Indian democracy and a key feature of the Constitution. Why should people decide? India, as we know, became independent on 15th August 1947. Preceding this was a long and difficult struggle in which many sections of society participated. People from various backgrounds joined the struggle, and they were inspired by the ideas of freedom, equality, and participation in decision making. Under colonial rule, the people had lived in fear of the British government and did not agree with many of the decisions that they took. But they faced grave danger if they tried to criticize these decisions. The freedom movement changed the situation. The nationalists began to openly criticize the British government and make demands. As far back as 1885, the Indian National Congress demanded that there should be elected members in the legislature with a right to decide the budget and ask questions. The Government of India Act 1909 allowed for some elected representation. While these early legislatures under the British government were in response to the growing demands of the nationalists, they did not allow for all adults to vote, nor could people participate in decision making. As you read in Chapter 1, the experience of colonial rule as well as the participation of different people in the struggle for freedom left little doubt in the minds of the nationalists that all persons in the independent India would be able to participate in making decisions. With the coming of independence, we were going to be citizens of a free country. This did not mean that the government could do what it felt like, but it meant that the government had to be sensitive to people's needs and demands. The dreams and aspirations of the freedom struggle were made concrete in the Constitution of Independent India that laid down the principle of universal adult franchise. That is, that all adult citizens of the country have the right to vote. The above photo shows a voter reading instructions on how to use an electronic voting machine, EVM. EVMs were used throughout the country for the first time in 2004 general elections. The use of EVMs in 2004 saved around 1,50,000 trees, which would have been cut to produce about 8,000 tons of paper for printing the ballot papers. People and their representatives. The takeoff point for a democracy is the idea of consent, that is, the desire, approval, and participation of people. It is the decision of people that creates a democratic government and decides about its functioning. The basic idea in this kind of democracy is that the individual or the citizen is the most important person, and that in principle the government as well as other public institutions need to have the trust of these citizens. How does the individual give approval to the government? One way of doing so, as you read, is through elections. People would elect their representatives to the parliament, then one group from among these representatives formed the government. The parliament, which is made up of all representatives, together controls and guides the government. In this sense, people, through their chosen representatives, form the government and also control it. This photo shows election staff using an elephant to carry polling material and EVMs to polling stations located in difficult terrain. The above idea of representation has been an important theme in your classes 6 and 7 social and political life textbooks. You are familiar with how representatives are chosen at different levels of government. Let us recall these ideas by doing the following exercise. Use the terms constituency and represent to explain who an MLA is and how the person gets elected. Discuss with your teacher the difference between a state legislative assembly, Vidhan Sabha, and the parliament, Lok Sabha. From the list below, identify the work of a state government and that of a central government. Fill in the blanks with the following words. Democratic governments in our times are usually referred to as representative democracies. In representative democracies, people do not participate directly but instead choose their representatives through an election process. These MLAs meet and make decisions for the entire population. These days, a government cannot call it democratic unless it allows what is known as universal adult franchise. This means that all adult citizens in the country are allowed to vote. You have read that most elected members, whether in the Panchayat or the Vidhan Sabha or the Parliament, are elected for a fixed period of 5 years. Why do we have a system where the representatives are elected for a fixed period and not for life? You have read that people participate in other ways and not just through elections to express approval or disapproval of the actions of government. Can you describe 3 such ways through a small skit? One, the Parliament of India, Sadan, is the supreme law-making institution. It has 2 houses, the Rajya Sabha and the Lok Sabha. 2. Rajya Sabha, Council of States with a total strength of 245 members, is chaired by the Vice President of India. 3. Lok Sabha, House of the People, with a total membership of 545, is presided by the Speaker. The role of the Parliament. Created after 1947, the Indian Parliament is an expression of faith that people of India have in principles of democracy. These are participation by people in the decision-making process and government by consent. The Parliament in our system has immense powers because it is the representative of the people. Elections to the Parliament are held in a similar manner as they are for the state legislature. The Lok Sabha is usually elected once every 5 years. The country is divided into numerous constituencies as shown in the map on page 41. Each of these constituencies elects one person to the Parliament. The candidate who contest elections usually belong to different political parties. With the help of table below, let us understand this further. Results of the 17th Lok Sabha elections, May 2019. Results of the 15th Lok Sabha elections, May 2009. The above table gives you the result of the 15th Lok Sabha elections held in 2009. In these elections, the INC got a large number of seats, but still not enough to emerge as the majority party in the Lok Sabha. It thus had to form a coalition, the United Progressive Alliance (UPA), with other political parties who were its allies. Once elected, these candidates become members of parliament or MPs. These MPs together make up the parliament. Once elections to the parliament have taken place, the parliament needs to perform the following functions. A. To select the national government. Parliament of India consists of the President, the Rajya Sabha and the Lok Sabha. After the Lok Sabha elections, a list is prepared showing how many MPs belong to each political party. For a political party to form the government, they must have a majority of elected MPs. Since there are 543 elected plus 2 Anglo-Indian nominated members in Lok Sabha, to have a majority, a party should have at least half the number, that is 272 members or more. The opposition in parliament is formed by all political parties that oppose the majority party coalition formed. The largest amongst these parties is called the opposition party. One of the most important functions of the Lok Sabha is to select the executive. The executive, as you read in chapter 1, is a group of persons who work together to implement laws made by the parliament. This executive is often what we have in mind when we use the term government. The Prime Minister of India is the leader of the ruling party in the Lok Sabha. From the MPs who belong to her party, the Prime Minister selects ministers to work with her to implement decisions. These ministers then take charge of different areas of government functioning like health, education, finance, etc. Oftentimes in the recent past, it has been difficult for a single political party to get the majority that is required to form the government. They then join together with different political parties who are interested in similar concerns to form what is known as a coalition government. These two buildings of the Central Secretariat, the South Block and North Block, were built during the 1930s. The photo on the left is of the South Block, which houses the Prime Minister's Office (PMO), the Ministry of Defence and the Ministry of External Affairs. The North Block is the photo on the right, and this has the Ministry of Finance and the Ministry of Home Affairs. The other ministries of the Union government are located in various buildings in New Delhi. The Rajya Sabha functions primarily as the representative of states of India in the parliament. The Rajya Sabha can also initiate legislation, and a bill is required to pass through the Rajya Sabha in order to become a law. It therefore has an important role in reviewing and altering, if alterations are needed, the laws initiated by the Lok Sabha. The members of the Rajya Sabha are elected by the elected members of the legislative assemblies of various states. There are 233 elected members plus 12 members nominated by the President. B. To control, guide and inform the government. The Parliament, while in session, begins with a question hour. The question hour is an important mechanism through which MPs can elicit information about the working of the government. This is a very important way through which the Parliament controls the executive. By asking questions, the government is alerted to its shortcomings and also comes to know the opinion of the people through their representatives in the Parliament, that is, the MPs. Asking questions to the government is a crucial task for every MP. The opposition parties play a crucial role in the healthy functioning of a democracy. They highlight drawbacks in various policies and programs of the government and mobilize popular support for their own policies. The following is an example of a question asked in Parliament. Lok Sabha. Unstart question number 48 answered on 15/12/2017. Converge of schemes for children. Manoj Rajoria. Will the Minister of Women and Child Development be pleased to state A. Whether the government proposes to converge various schemes and policies of children in the country? B. If so, the details thereof, and if not, the reasons therefor. Answer. Minister of State in the Ministry of Women and Child Development, Dr. Virendra Kumar. A to C. The Ministry has adopted the National Plan of Action for Children 2016, which largely draws upon the existing programs and schemes of various ministries, departments. It provides a framework for convergence and coordination between ministries, departments, and states, UTs, governments, and encourages collective action from all stakeholders to address multidimensional vulnerabilities experienced by children. The National Plan of Action for Children 2016 categorizes children's rights under four key priority areas. 1. Survival, health and nutrition. 2. Education and development. 3. Protection. 4. Participation. It identifies key programs, schemes, and policies as well as stakeholders for the implementation of different strategies. The government gets valuable feedback and is kept on its toes by the questions asked by the MPs. In addition, in all matters dealing with finance, the Parliament's approval is crucial for the government. It is one of several ways in which the Parliament controls, guides, and informs the government. The MPs are representatives of the people, have a central role in controlling, guiding, and informing Parliament, and this is a key aspect of the functioning of Indian democracy. C. Lawmaking. Lawmaking is a significant function of Parliament. We shall read about this in the next chapter. Who are the people in Parliament? Parliament now has more and more people from different backgrounds. For example, there are more rural members as also members from many regional parties, groups, and peoples that were till now not represented are beginning to get elected to Parliament. There has been an increase in political participation from the Dalits and backward classes. Let us look at the following table that shows the percentage of the population who voted in Lok Sabha elections in different years. It has been observed that representative democracy cannot produce a perfect reflection of society. There is a realization that when interests and experiences separate us, it is important to ensure that communities that have been historically marginalized are given adequate representation. With this in mind, some seats are reserved in Parliament for SCs and STs. This has been done so that the MPs elected from these constituencies will be familiar with and can represent Dalit and Adivasi interests in Parliament. Similarly, it has more recently been suggested that there should be reservation of seats for women. This issue is still being debated. 60 years ago, only 4% of MPs were women, and today it is just above 11%. This is a small share when you consider the fact that half of population are women. It is issues of this kind that force the country to ask certain difficult and often unresolved questions about whether our democratic system is representative enough. The fact that we can ask these questions and are working towards answers is a reflection of the strength and the faith that people in India have in a democratic form of government. The above photo shows a few women members of Parliament. Glossary. Approval. To give one's consent to and be favorable towards something. In the context of this chapter, it refers both to the formal consent through elected representatives that Parliament has, as well as the fact that it needs to continue to enjoy the people's trust. Coalition. A temporary alliance of groups or parties. In this chapter, it refers to the alliance formed by political parties after elections when no party has been able to get adequate seats to form a clear majority. Unresolved. Situations in which there are no easy solutions to problems.